within the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ibrahim alayhi salam is surely after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam being the last prophet and being chosen one in so many different ways within the prophets with special ranks. After the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is none other than Ibrahim alayhi salam. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. Now Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran and in the Sunnah, we know that he has multiple stages that are mentioned, multiple episodes from his life. So his childhood, not early, but his childhood when he's still a young boy, when they call him a fata, and his time of migration when he's moving around and he doesn't have children yet, or he has very young child Ismail, and then in his old age when he is coming back and building the Kaaba with Ismail alayhi salam. So many years. So it could very well be over 100 years from the first incident of Ibrahim alayhi salam being mentioned as a child talking to his father, and all the way up until the building of the Kaaba that Ibrahim alayhi salam is mentioned in the Quran. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Maryam that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he speaks to his father. Now, where is Ibrahim alayhi salam? It is said that Ibrahim alayhi salam was born in Babylon or Babel, or in this area, which is again, they call this area to be Iraq. They call this area to be the Mediterranean. What is it called? The Mediterranean basin, the cradle of civilization. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is born somewhere there, and we see that as a young person, as a young child almost, Ibrahim alayhi salam speaks to his father, and he says, "Oh my father, why do you worship something that does not hear, does not see, does not benefit?" And he says, "Follow me to the straight path and don't follow shaitan. I fear punishment of Ar-Rahman will overtake you if you do." And he uses the softest of tone with his father, which is Ya Abati, or Ya Abi, or Ya Abati. These are basically very soft forms of referring to your father, your parents. And he used Allah's name Ar-Rahman, the most gracious, instead of the stronger names of Allah like Al-Muntaqim, Al-Jabbar. So, subhanAllah, if you look at the wisdom in this, that even Ar-Rahman is softer than Allah in terms of what the name of Allah conveys. So we see that how you talk to people, how you refer to them, it matters. And when you are even talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how do you refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You can change the names of Allah in order to convey the proper meaning and the tone that you're trying to convey during that time. So his father responds harshly, and he says, "I will punish you, O Ibrahim, and leave me, don't bother me with this." Now, what was Ibrahim's father doing? It is said that Ibrahim's father, Ibrahim alayhi salam's father, was not only a worshipper of idols, but he was a maker and seller of idols. And if you remember that when we talked about alcohol in our evening Khatirah, that the Prophet ﷺ, he cursed and he made dua against 10 people related to alcohol. 10 people related to alcohol. The one who makes it, the one who is made it for, the one who transports it, the one who is transported for, the one who takes the price of it, the one who prepares the raw materials for it. Basically anything and everything around alcohol, because alcohol itself is so evil that if you have any hand in it, around it, you are cursed. Now, if that's the case with alcohol, then what about shirk, making idols, which are the worst of the worst in terms of the sinning with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, there is a interesting debate. I was actually watching something online that these two people of knowledge, of different backgrounds, were debating whether it is possible for the parents of any prophet to be mushrikeen. And one of them was arguing that it is not possible for the parents of any prophet to be mushrikeen. And the other person said, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ آزَرَ, when Ibrahim called to his father Azar. So, how could it be? So, is there any answer to this? What is the answer? What is that? Yeah, so there are different views about this, which is that, like he says, that Abi doesn't necessarily mean only father. It could mean grandfather. It could also mean uncle, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us that Yusuf alayhi salam, he called Ibrahim and Ismail and Ishaq his fathers. So there is some room for discussion there. And like brother said, that it may not be his biological father. It could be, for example, an adopted father. But again, it doesn't really matter. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Abi, the relationship is there. Now, what is the point that he was making? He was saying that the mushriki, the parents of all of the prophets, they are from a pure lineage. But I think that this is not necessary, because then if you say, okay, the parents are not mushrikeen, then what about parents' parents? How far does purity have to be there? And we say no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that no one is held accountable for the sins of their fathers. And no one is held accountable for the sins of their sons, okay, or for their children. Everyone, this is the system that Allah has created, but essentially everyone is an individual in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِيهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ farda, right? Everyone will come in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an individual. They will not be like, okay, well, I'm the son of so-and-so, or I'm the father of so-and-so. These things in Islam, one of the core messages of Islam is exactly this, which is you have to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't matter if you come from a family of imams. You need to be making your salah. You need to be doing your own Quran. Sometimes you meet people and you say, yeah, I come from a family of imams. And I'm like, okay, you come from, mashallah, you come from a family of imams, but today is the first time I'm meeting you in the masjid, and I have never seen you before, and you live in the area. What's going on? So just because you come from a righteous family doesn't make any difference in Islam. In fact, if you do come from a righteous family, you have a higher responsibility that you should live up that good, positive legacy as opposed to destroying it. So, when his father responded to him harshly, and he said that, لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ, I will punish you, I will stone you, I will do all these things to you if you keep doing this. Then Ibrahim alayhi salam, he responded to him in a soft manner again, قَالَ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكَ سَأَسْتَغْفِرُ لَكَ رَبِّي إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِي حَفِيًّا, that peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. I will ask forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you. Now, a couple of lessons that we can learn from this is that, number one is that if someone you give da'wah to does not accept the da'wah, you are not responsible for making them believe. In fact, what you do is that if you give da'wah, if you discuss with someone, and they don't listen to you, they don't respond positively, you don't have to keep chasing them until you make them hate it even more. But rather, you look at it this way, that you plant a seed. Most people that become Muslim, Or most people that have a reawakening as a Muslim, like they were born Muslim in a Muslim family but didn't really practice, but then something happens and they start practicing. Usually, it is a process where there were multiple moments of soft awakenings that took place. Some experience that made them think something, but they didn't really follow up. Like, imagine like one push took them like 10-15% of the way. But it planted something, it started to seed, the seed started to grow. Then another push maybe takes them another 40-50%. Then another push maybe takes them all the way, or maybe takes them almost there, but not quite there. And then there's a final push somewhere where they're like, now it is. And there are many, many examples of this where people, they have multiple run-ins with life or multiple run-ins with death that makes them think. So never look at it as a wasted effort, but rather look at it as a seed that we have planted. You know, I'm trying to grow cilantro in my house, and I'm failing every single time. But basically, the process is that you have to set it and forget it in a dark place, in a moist environment. No sunlight should reach there, no air should go there. And then you have some hope that maybe the seed will sprout. Okay? And you may have to try multiple times. I'm on my third batch, which I'm about to throw out and start a fourth one. And I don't know how many it will take. But this is the reality of growing something, right? So don't look at it as a wasted effort, but look at it as you planted a seed. Perhaps someone else will come, they will water the seed, they will be able to take care of it and bring it out to where you would like to see it. But you will come on the day of judgment, you would see the effort of it. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, okay, Dad, if you don't want to follow, it's fine. Salamun alayk. Now he says, Astaghfiru laka Rabbi. I will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for you. Now this issue is something which comes in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses it twice separately. And he says that وَمَا كَانَ what is the ayah? وَمَا كَانَ اسْتِغْفَارُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ لِيَبِيهِ إِلَّا عَنْ مَوْعِدَةٍ وَعَدَهَا إِيَّاهُ فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ أَنَّهُ عَدُوٌّ لِلَّهِ تَبَرَّأَ مِنْهُ إِنَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ لَحَلِيمٌ أَوَّاهٌ مُنِيبٌ. So Ibrahim alayhi salam's istighfar for his father was nothing but a promise that he had made, so he had to fulfill it. So here we see that if you make a promise, Ibrahim alayhi salam had given a word, right? So did he say, I promise that I will make istighfar for you? No, he didn't. He said, Qala salamun alayk sa'astaghfiru laka Rabbi. But for a believer, your word is a promise. It doesn't have to be, I declare that I make a promise that I will do this for you. If you said, I will do this for you, I will do this for you. That's enough. So sometimes if we are dealing with someone and maybe something comes out, the Prophet ﷺ said that if there are two buyer and seller, two people, they are with each other and they are discussing the details of their sale, they have the right to change as long as they are together. Okay, so you and I, we're discussing, we're standing at your shop, and I'm saying, yeah, I think, you know what, I will come and pick it up tomorrow for $100. And then we start discussing other products. We are still together. As long as we are together, then I have the right to say, well, you know what, I think I'm going to think about it. Don't wait for me tomorrow. I will think about it. As long as we are together, our sale is not finalized. But if we separate on a certain agreement, then that sale is finalized. Now, if I want to cancel it, what do I have to do? After splitting. Now I need your agreement. Okay? Now I need to say, well, look, I wanted to buy it, but I'm not really feeling up to it. What do you think? You think I can back out of it? So of course, most people, they'll say, okay, you don't want to buy it, you don't want to buy it. But in some places, they'll say, well, you did make a promise. So if you feel like that person he's only saying yes because he doesn't have other choice, you should fulfill your word if you can. If you cannot do it, then ask for forgiveness or ask for more time or something of that sort. Otherwise, it is not a good practice for a person to do so. So Ibrahim alayhi salam has said this, so he fulfilled that, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but when he realized that he is annahu aduwwul lillah, he is an enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he tabarra'a min, he disassociated himself from him. He disassociated himself from him. And this is the case with regards to anyone who dies, anyone who is a mushrik or a disbeliever now, we can make dua for them for guidance. We can make, as long as they're alive. But once they pass away, and we don't know if they ever took their shahada, then we cannot ask Allah to forgive them. The best hope that we can have is that perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about them something that we don't know. Okay, but we cannot ask for forgiveness, meaning someone dies openly not having declared Islam. But maybe if Allah had willed, maybe somebody had privately come and seen him, and this person had privately declared his shahada between him and Allah, or between him and someone else in front of Allah, of course. So if that's the case, Allah will deal with him according to that, and Allah will not oppress anyone. But since we don't know it publicly, that yes, this person did become Muslim, then we are not allowed to make dua of istighfar for that person. Now, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he, sometime after, while he's still young, he's still a young boy, he puts on a PowerPoint presentation. That there is some sort of a festival where the people, they go out, and it's like they camp out. And they do all of their rituals and whatnot, and they look and they consider, the Mufassirin say that these people, they considered heavenly bodies to be gods. They considered heavenly bodies, like stars, to be gods, goddesses. You know, they say moon god, sun god, and they say that most of the days that we have, right, Monday is moon day. These are named after gods of previous civilizations. Sunday. Thursday was Thor. Thor, you know Thor? Guy with the hammer. Thor's day. So these are basically, these names are coming from there. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he goes out with his people, and his intention is to teach the people. So he puts on a show. And he says that when he sees a star, a bright star in the sky, he says, "This is my Lord." You know, basically somebody says, "Hey, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine." He says, "Oh, that one is mine." But when the star sets, he says, "I don't like those that disappear." La uhibbul afilin. I don't like those that disappear. Then he sees the moon rising, and he says, "This is my Lord." But when the moon set, he says, "Unless my Lord guide me, I shall be among the misguided." Meaning, who is my real God? I can't find him yet. I haven't found him yet, he's saying to them, because this one also set. Then he sees the sun. He says, "This is my Lord, and this is greater. Hada akbar. This is the biggest." But the sun set, and he said, "I am indeed free from what you associate with Allah." He says, inni bari'um mimma tushrikun. I am free from what you associate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have turned my face. Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi fatara as-samawati wal ard. I have turned my face towards He who created the heaven and the earth. So he basically, you know what this is called in terms of logical analysis? What is it called? Deduction, right? Deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, meaning that, okay, let's consider this star. But then the star gets minused. Okay? Then, okay, let's go for the moon. Perhaps you guys are right, the moon must be the God, but the moon gets deducted as well. Then sun gets minused out from the equation as well. So none of those are left. So he says, none of them can be God, because all of them have disappeared from the picture. So how could we be worshiping someone who is not there? So he says, in fact, I worship the one who created all of these. Now, notice that he says, Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi fatara samawati wal ard. That I am turning my face in the direction of the one who created all of this. Now, does he say, I'm turning my face to Allah? He doesn't say that. But he's saying that the God must be the one who created above all of this. Not necessarily he's saying, I'm turning to Allah, because he still wants them to continue thinking, right? So sometimes when you want to make a point, to someone, a very smart approach is to actually not give them the answer, but to actually ask questions that lead them to realize the truth. And they say also with kids, if you want to make a point, if you tell them the answer, they usually don't listen to you. But if you ask them questions which make them think, oh yeah, it can't be that. It can't be that. So that is a better approach. Now, in order for us to do that, it requires a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, a lot of studying the facts. And, like let's say there's a kid who doesn't want to study. He says, all I'm going to do is I'm going to grow up to be a football star. I'm going to be a multi-millionaire. I don't need to worry about anything, that's all. And so now, how are you going to convince this kid? Is that you? Okay. How are you going to convince that kid that the chances of anyone getting selected to play is so low that you would be a big loser if you don't get in and you didn't do anything else? You just relied only on that, and now you didn't get selected. God forbid you get injured by that time you get there. God forbid you have some sort of a health problem. You have some issue and you don't get selected. What are you going to do in life then? So if you tell them, hey, I don't think that's a good idea, you're going to keep arguing. But if you, maybe they say, put a story in front of them about somebody else who wanted to do this and they didn't get selected, and they were a really good candidate, but something happened, that's a better approach. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he is a master teacher. And he is teaching his people in the most intelligent way, where he's not giving them the answer, but he's making them work their own logic and come to the realization. Now, he does this several times, right? The next episode is even stronger lesson. It is said that when he was a child, he also did this with his father, that he toyed with the idols that his father was making. He toyed with them, and he basically would, drag them around. And there's some of the Sahaba did this as well as they were young children. It is said about, I believe, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, that as a child, he had come to the realization, and he was basically there like, okay, if this idol is the God, then if I were to do something, harm him, this idol should stop me from doing so. And when they did it, nothing happened. So obviously, okay, something is wrong here. So then Ibrahim alayhi salam, he asked his people, what were these idols that they worship? See the questioning again? He says, "Ma hadhihi at-tamathilu allati antum laha aakifun." That you are, we are saying aakifun, like they are making i'tikaf, and they are spending a lot of time with these idols. So he says, what are these? Tell me more about them. Again, that questioning, tell me more about them. So the people told him that they found their fathers worshiping the idols. And remember what we talked about last night, right? That just because you found other people doing it doesn't mean that's the right thing. You need to know what is the reasoning for this. You need to understand and investigate, okay, why are we doing what we are doing, right? So even, like I said, that in our own religious practices, when we come across other people from other religions, when we come across other people from other schools of thought, and maybe they are praying a different way, slightly different like we all do. So we should not automatically assume that what I am doing must be right unless I've actually studied the issue. But rather, if we are exposed to a different opinion, now I need to know, okay, well, are both of these valid opinions? Or has culture mixed into one of these two? So we cannot disprove this idea that, well, this is what I found my forefathers doing. It is not an acceptable excuse. This is not an acceptable excuse. So if you say, well, I went and I studied and this is a legitimate opinion within the schools of thought, no problem. But I tell you that in every culture, there are practices which are assumed to be from the dominant school of thought in that area, but they're actually not from any reputable scholars, but rather they are cultural practices that have become the norm, and the people simply assume that if everyone back home does it, it must be coming from somewhere. Okay? So there's no harm in studying. There's no harm in studying the issues. So they told him that we found our forefathers doing it. So Ibrahim alayhi salam told them that they and their fathers, what if the fathers were wrong? How do you know? Did you ever investigate? And he says that, your fathers they did not have any evidence. So, but they said, no, we don't, just leave us alone. So one day, a festival comes where the people leave. Perhaps it is the same festival where he's already been to the festival. This time, he says, let me try a different approach. Let them go, and I will stay. And when everyone is about to leave, they pass by Ibrahim and ask whether he's coming along. And Ibrahim said, Inni saqim, I am sick. Okay? Now, can you be sick while you're not actually physically sick? Huh? So, sometimes we say, kids say, I'm sick. But what they really mean is, I'm sick of school. I'm sick of going every day. So he says, Inni saqim, I am sick. So what is that? I don't remember. But anyways. So he makes this excuse, whether he's legitimately sick or he's not, Allahu alam. He says, I'm sick, so you guys go. So they all leave. He stays behind. When everyone went away, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he took an axe and smashed all the idols except the biggest one. And he put the axe around the big idol. The people came back and they saw the idols were destroyed. And some people mention that they said, Man fa'ala hadha bi alihatina innahu la min al-zalimin. Whoever did this is definitely a oppressor. What a bad guy destroyed our idols. Then someone said, Sami'na fatan yadhkuruhum yuqalu lahu Ibrahim. We heard about a young man, Ibrahim is his name. He was talking about them. So they call him and say, أَأَنْتَ فَعَلْتَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا يَا Ibrahim? Did you do this, O Ibrahim, with our idols? Now, subhanAllah, they should be thinking, like, wait, these are our gods, they got destroyed. But subhanAllah, they say that, in Urdu they say, mat mari gayi, which is that your intelligence gets covered. That instead of looking at the big thing, you're ignoring the big issue, and you're focusing on something which really does not matter. So Ibrahim alayhi salam says, قَالَ بَلْ فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ إِنْ كَانُوا not يُجِيبُونَ يَنْطِقُونَ. If they talk, then ask them. So the scholars have said that قَالَ بَلْ فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا. So they say that if you continue reading, so قَالَ بَلْ فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا, that he's saying, rather it's the big one, this one, that did this. Okay? Another way they say قَالَ بَلْ فَعَلَهُ, stop. كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ. So he's playing with words. He's saying, did you do this, Ya Ibrahim? And he says, قَالَ بَلْ فَعَلَهُ. He says, yes, indeed, he did it. Meaning the one you're asking, yes, indeed, he did it. كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا. The big one among them is this. But if you say it all together, you know how you kind of change the comma? If you change the comma, it changes the meaning. So you're not writing here, you're talking. So some of the scholars have interpreted it this way that, he didn't say he was a white lie. It was not a lie. So he says, okay, whatever happened, why don't you ask them who did it? فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ. Ask them if they talk. So they said, they don't talk. What kind of question is that? So the people, they admitted, and they're like embarrassingly admitted that they don't talk. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, right then, they say strike when the iron is hot. He says, then why do you worship these that they cannot even benefit or harm you, let alone, they cannot benefit or harm you, let alone protect themselves. They cannot protect themselves, let alone benefit or harm you. What is wrong with you? Now, this is the closer. They don't have anything else that they could add to this, so they only have one answer. قَالُوا حَرِّقُوهُ. Let's burn him. How dare he do this? So this is basically, again, a sign of a loser in an argument. That when you lose, when you have no answer to come back, then the only option is to harm the other person, to attack the other person, to raise your voice, to shout, because you've run out of facts. So now you need to use other methods to try to look like you did not lose. So they said, okay, the people became angry, and they said, let's burn him. So they made a fire, and it is said that it took 6 months to light up this fire, meaning they felt that they were offended so much that they have to defend the gods by the most magnificent overture to them. So they made a massive fire. It was so hot that the birds could not fly over it without being killed, because the heat of it is so high that any bird, the highest flying birds, cannot fly over it because the fire is that high. So the water ran out. Because the fire was so big, they could not go near it. So it's so hot you can't even get close to it. So they put Ibrahim alayhi salam on a catapult and launched him into the fire. Before being thrown into the fire, an angel came and asked if he needed anything. So what angel would that be? Probably, Jibreel is the one that comes to the prophets of Allah. Oh, Ibrahim, they're about to throw you in the fire. Do you need anything? So Ibrahim alayhi salam says, nothing from you. Nothing from you. What he's saying is that when they threw him into the fire, he said, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, or Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil. The sufficient for me is Allah, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Okay, he's saying, look, Allah knows that I'm being thrown in the fire. And if this is what Allah wants, I'm pleased with that. But to me, Allah is sufficient. I don't need anyone else's protection. Now this statement is a very, very powerful statement if it is said with proper belief. Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil, or Hasbun Allahu wa ni'mal wakil, that the scholars have said, based on the ayah in the Quran, that when the Sahaba said Hasbun Allahu wa ni'mal wakil, Allah said فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ. So Allah responded to them. But the word fa, it implies a relationship to what came before. So meaning they said this statement, then Allah responded. So they said if anybody says this statement on when they need help, and they do not believe that Allah is going to help them, they are out of the fold of Islam. Because they said that if they don't believe that Allah will respond, they are rejecting the fa. And to reject one letter of the Quran takes a person out of the fold of Islam. They're just saying it. The meaning they're saying Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, but in their heart they're like, I'm done, I'm dead, I'm helpless, right? So meaning it should not be Ibrahim alayhi salam when he's saying this, he doesn't mean that Allah is going to save me from the fire. He's saying, if it's Allah's plan for me to burn, that's fine with me. I know that that's not going to be harmful to me. Okay? But whatever happens from here on, once I put my affairs in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether I die from this sickness that I'm going through or I live, it will be the plan of Allah, and I'm pleased with the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever happens will be good because Allah is in control of it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the fire, as he says, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Allah told the fire to be cool and safe for Ibrahim. And the scholars say that Allah did not just say to the fire, be cool. Because if it was too cold, it would also harm him. So he said, بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا, cool and safe and comfortable. So it is said that Ibrahim alayhi salam used to say that the best days of his life were those in the fire. Because literally Allah commanded the fire to be a salam. And you know, salam is, when we say assalamu alaikum to someone, we are saying, may you be wholesome in every way. May you be wholesome in every way. That no harm come upon you. So whether it's food, whether it's thirst, whether it's cold, whether it's heat, whatever difficulties could come upon, Ibrahim alayhi salam will not feel that in the fire. When the fire had been extinguished, and of course, the people, they're like, okay, let's see what's left of this. You know, usually what happens in these fires, what do you find of human remains? What do you think? Nothing. Even the bones, they become powder, okay? And it's even hard to basically be able to properly identify them. That DNA is even, sometimes it's possible that maybe something was covered under and maybe tiny little piece of flesh remained that they were able to extract the DNA from. But most of the times, nothing is left. But they're expecting, okay, let's see what is left of him. And of course, the fire is put out, and Ibrahim alayhi salam, he walks out alive, untouched by the fire. And their plot was foiled and they were defeated. Now at this time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, فَآمَنَ لَهُ لُوط, that Ibrahim alayhi salam, when this happens, it said that 2 people believed in him at this time. Who were those 2? Lut and Sarah. Lut and Sarah, they believed in him. Inshallah, we'll stop here and we'll continue tomorrow if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills with the rest of the story. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. What is that? Humility did not? Humanity did not change. Humanity is humanity. Yeah. Yeah. The fact that Allah is telling us this story in the Quran, so there is something for us to learn. If there was something that Allah told us in the Quran which was not relevant to us, there would be no reason for Allah to tell us that. So it is to set our expectations right and to understand. Now, subhanAllah, look at this. And we will see that, did Ibrahim alayhi salam see victory in his life? He was mostly alone. Mostly alone. Lived a simple life. Didn't become a king or a leader or anything. But subhanAllah, now, the more than half of the earth claims to be followers of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the lesson is, don't worry about the fruit, worry about the seed. And just plant the seed and do the best for as long as you are there. Take care of it, plant it, water it, all of those things. If it grows in your life, fine. If it doesn't grow in your life, fine, no problem. You do your part, you go on, Allah will take care of it. And we'll come later to the adhan of Ibrahim alayhi salam. You know, the other day, the brother, he gave a talk on Saturday. He said to me, I said, okay, go ahead, start at 8:30. 8:30, nobody's here. He said, yeah, but nobody's here. I said, the call of Ibrahim alayhi salam, no one was there. But look, now people are dying to go. So you start, they will come. And he started, and then of course, people kept coming. And then afterward I told him, I said, remember I told you? So, subhanAllah, this is the reality, which is, don't worry about who will follow you. Remember, we talked also last night that the majority of the people, they are not usually following the right way in the beginning. If you realize the right way, you go. Once you go, they might follow. They might not follow, but they might follow. Leave it up to them. You go the right way. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.